Welcome to Lou Palumbo's Between the Lines. Problem solving for our future. Lou. Common sense, logic, and reasoning. Lou. The man that can't stand hate and animus. Lou. Stimulating the thought process of America. Lou. Where being right is not political, it's factual. Lou. Providing real solutions in real time. And now, here's your host, Lou Palumbo.
Welcome to Between the Lines. My name is Lou Palumbo. I think to say there is no shortage of things to discuss may be perhaps, I don't even know how to say, understatement of the world. I mean, I don't even know where to begin today. The tragic part in these discussions that they ultimately translate to our children. They intersect with the lives of our children and their future, their safety, their security, their freedom. We're going to take some callers today. We're going to have some emails that I will read. I don't think there's any secret what's going on in the Ukraine, and I think there's a number of reasons that precipitated this exercise by Putin. Between the policies of this country, which we demonstrated were faulty, in Afghanistan, which I believe triggered Putin into realizing our ineptness with our foreign policies, and our lack of response. I don't quite understand why globally we are not responding against Putin. And at some point, I'm hoping they're having a conversation with China so China sees the lack of merit. And from what I'm understanding in an article I read today in the Times, they are. I think they realize that this is causing problems for them. Interestingly enough, as according to the news, they're killing women and children indiscriminately. The rationale that they're applying is as follows. If a civilian is armed with an assault rifle, he's no longer a civilian. Some truth to that. And that's how they're justifying this indiscriminate bombings of residences, hospitals, pretty much every establishment you can possibly think of in the Ukraine. Maybe the worst part about this is we're all sitting back watching it. And I'm going to say this to you. History is going to harshly judge this country and its Western allies. These 30 countries that are in NATO, 27 sitting in Europe, we're all sitting there worried that he might use a nuclear bomb. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be what it's going to be. We have a problem on our hands here, and there's no easy way out. And everybody's got to kind of buck up and call this guy out. And if that's the direction he wants to take it, we all need to know and understand one very basic concept. No one's going to survive this. We're talking about, planet extinction. I don't want to forget mentioning Phantom Rescue, which is headed by Frank Smith and Tony Sparks, who I believe Tony was actually at its inception. Very simply, they're concerned about sex trafficking, which is quite pervasive in our country. It does not glean the attention it should. It's happening at our borders, happening within families. And interestingly enough, it's happening on the lands that are run by the indigenous people. Before we get rolling here today, I just want to remind everyone that we are sponsored by Buzzsprout and Instacart, and they're both exceptional outlets. User-friendly, you can find them on your phone. I use them, both of them. In fact, this show is built off of Buzzsprout. And Instacart is as simple as, going on your cell phone or your computer and ordering commodities from a grocery store, and they'll deliver to you. So, and I would tell you, give them both a whirl. They're both very, very good. They work. I would not say they worked if they didn't, because I don't need my name associated with something that's a failure. In any case, with that being said, we're going to get the show on the road. And I think we're going to go to our first caller. We're waiting for Andrew to call in from Nevada. Andrew, are you going to call me, buddy? Hello?
Hey, it's Andrew.
Andrew, how are you?
Good.
And you're in Nevada, I gather, huh?
What's that?
Are you in Nevada currently? Is that my understanding?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think I was going right on. I apologize, Joe. How are you?
No, it's Lou.
Lou, I'm an idiot.
No, relax. Everybody's got to relax. Not the end of the world.
No.
My skin's not that thin.
Right on.
So I gather you're residing in Nevada, Andrew. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
I have to tell you something interesting. On the internet, and I wish I could forward this to you, there was a very interesting interaction with a young man who was in a restaurant at the same time the governor was, and he got into the governor's face, and I would say in a rather caustic, insulting, and abrasive capacity. And what we came to learn is the governor is traveling without the governor's detail, security detail. It was kind of interesting. It's on the internet somewhere. But you have a question today, Andrew?
Yeah, well, of course, I would love to know your take on the events that are going on in Ukraine right now.
Well, I'm going to sum it up one word: shameful. Shameful
Yes.
on the part of Putin, shameful
Yes.
on the lack of response from the United States and its 29 colleagues that are associated with NATO. I understand this whole issue of Article 5. You have to be a member of NATO in order to invoke Article 5. I didn't know we would ever sit back idly in the day in which we live and watch anyone, no less Putin, just indiscriminately destroy a country and murder people. No nice way to say this.
I agree.
It speaks to cowardice, to be candid with you. I know it's easy to sit here and critique the policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C., but I got to tell you something. I'm worried about whether or not they have the skill set and the basic, fundamental, bottom-line understanding of how to get through life. It isn't in a book. It's in the streets. I learned it as a law enforcement agent. I learned it before that, growing up in the streets of New York, ironically. But sometimes you got to be able to dance with the devil, and we don't seem to have that resolved. The reason that we're showing such constraint is because we're fearful that he might escalate into a nuclear war. I have to say one thing.
He said he would.
Andrew, can I listen? I have 4 young children, so I have skin in the game. The last thing I want to do is see a nuclear encounter, period, end of discussion. But sometimes the handwriting might just be on the wall. This is not a stable man, not because he's insane, but because of his context in which he grew up as a little boy and his career path. He's got a very narrow path of thinking. He's not crazy. He's just not well. And there's no easy way with this. There's no easy way out. So I say to the NATO nations, 27 that sit in Europe, to grow a pair and go after him in the Ukraine. And wherever the chips fall after that, the chips fall. I do have to say one thing, and I want to let you comment again, Andrew. They're reporting that 95% of his military is present in the Ukraine. Based on the showing and the performance of his military, it's not looking good for him. If this is what his military... No, you understand my point? So what are you afraid of? He's going to push a button? I don't know what to say to people. This is a hard decision. There's a lack of morality in the way we're not addressing this. But go ahead, Andrew. I know you want to say something.
Well, I was just going to say I agree with you. I hate sitting there and watching everybody just stand by and allowing it to happen. I mean, I have a warrior spirit. I understand why NATO's not doing it because they have laws they have to follow. But, I mean, we could independently, and get some allies behind it and decide to do something. But the fact that we're buying his oil is really upsetting me right now.
That stopped today. Apparently, the president had a press conference, yes, which is a big part of the problem. I have vowed not to become political in these discussions because we don't need any more rhetoric that polarizes or divides the country. But I have grave concern for the leadership of this country and their lack of courage. And it's easy to sit here and say, I tell you what, bring me into Washington, we'll have a whole different discussion. The guys I really want to talk to are the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because I'm sure they have a whole nother outlook on this thing. We are politicizing this thing. As far as the oil goes, they did what they did. The first day in his office, he shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. We went from having oil flowing to having oil not flow. We went from being energy independent to energy dependent. This is irrefutable. Yeah. And I understand they're trying to strong arm us into using electric cars. But I don't want to dominate this conversation with you because I brought you on to hear your thoughts as well, Andrew. So please let me know what you're thinking.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that because it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And it's interesting that you brought up the thing with the electric cars because it's ironic though that the so-called solutions they have to these problems aren't really solutions because electric cars aren't a solution. I mean, those batteries are very toxic. They don't last forever. You're gonna have to do something with them. So that's a whole other angle.
Let me delve into this a little bit with you so people understand. The first thing is this: to buy these cars that they allude to, roughly around $60,000. To charge these batteries can be as little as 30 minutes and as much as 12 hours. If you were to fully charge a vehicle overnight, it would take you 8 hours on a 7 kilowatt charging port. So let's just do this analogy. You drive 1,000 miles, 250 miles is the range, right?
Right.
So you got to stop 4 times and spend at least 30 minutes charging the car. So you spent 2 hours recharging your car, number one. Number two,
Right.
bigger issue, guess where the batteries are coming out of in Tesla's cars, for example. Thank you, buddy. They produce 80% of them. This is another issue of who's been steering the ship here. And I'm not blaming Joe Biden for that. This has been a pattern that we undertook starting in and around the time that Nixon took office and Henry Kissinger was involved in a discussion of empowering China. Through a couple of generations of presidents, we somehow thought it was prudent to arm an adversary. Whether people like this, understand this or not, we have armed them. We've given them weaponry to use against us. So I don't know what to say in regards to that. The other thing is, it looks like we're going to get back in bed with the devil again in Iran. And ironically, it appears that Russia's going to be the I guess broker on this deal. I don't know how much funnier this is going to get.
How does this happen?
Want me to tell you how it happens? We keep there's a word in life called expectation, Andrew. And I say to people, never expect from people things they cannot give you. This way you're not disappointed. We have continuously elected people that do not understand what they're doing. They do not live in the real world. They are not problem solvers. I am an academic. I came from a very good Catholic college in New York. I went to 16 years of Catholic school. Not that that means anything, but I have a college education. The answers always, I should say very seldom, come from books. Books are guidelines. Then you make it up on the fly. You assess and measure adversary. You think long term. You look and think outside the box. None of these things happen with these people. The last guy that was in office that I thought might have had that attribute was Herbert Walker Bush, and he walked us into Iraq. I don't know what to tell you here, but we're in trouble here, and I impress upon people the need to vote in November, because we have a political mechanism here that is destroying this country, whether it's your economy, crime in your major cities, your borders, and these foreign policies like the one we saw demonstrated in Afghanistan, where we left Bogstrom Air Base with $85 billion to the Afghan rebels. You got to help me understand who the hell is sitting in Washington, D.C. We need a change in this country, and you have to do it through your vote. That's the one thing. And make sure you vote. But here's the other thing, Andrew. After we vote in the next conservative element, which is highly likely, what are they going to do different? Are you going to sit on your haunches like you do generation after generation, where you have these jobs until you die? We have a problem here, and we need to first and foremost recognize it and then put our heads together to try to fix it. I want to give you an opportunity to say something, and I want to tell you something you're going to find really interesting after the State of the Union speech. But go ahead. Go ahead, Andrew.
So I'm trying to remember his name. Sowell, I believe his last name is. He's an economist, and he talked about, Thomas Sowell. One of the things he said, when you talked about that there's going to be conservatives coming back and what are they going to do? He said something interesting. He said, when Democrats get in office, we tend to go backwards. And when conservatives get into office, we tend to go backwards less rapidly.
Yeah, you know what it's come down to is, our election process should not be picking the lesser of evils. And that's partly what it's become. I want to tell you something real quick, and we're going to have to go to a break. After the State of the Union message, I'm watching MSNBC with Morning Joe. Interesting show. I watch everyone just so I can understand what everybody's thinking. They have these two young congressmen gleefully explaining how they've managed to come across the aisle and come together and put their differences aside so they can help address the problems in the Ukraine. Isn't that wonderful? Why don't you knuckleheads try doing that here? This country is coming apart at the seams. You needed to watch this interview. This is almost as funny as the one where I saw with AOC talking about the light rail and how everybody will have it available to them. Like children in minority neighborhoods are worried about the light rail. I don't know what to tell you about this, but, we need leadership. We need sound, commonsensical leadership. agenda free. The problem is everybody's got everybody's hand in everybody's pocket here. And that's a big part of this problem. We need term limits so these guys don't burrow in, and all they do is every 2 years or 6 years blow smoke in your ear to get you to vote for them, thinking they're supporting your agenda regarding gun rights. I think you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, Andrew. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I agree with you 100%.
Andrew, stick with me. We're going to go to a quick break, and I'm going to start off with you, and then I'm going to have to move from there, Andrew, because I have some people backed up. This is Between the Lines.
Sure.
We'll be right back. Instacart, another interesting concept. You can go to your favorite grocery stores, sign on to their application without leaving your home, the comfort of your home. Just pick out the items you'd like. They'll assign a personal shopper for you and deliver them to the point that you would like them delivered to. Another great concept, very user-friendly, and I'll be honest, we use it also. It's very effective, and they're very, very good. They're very on point. We're back. I have a gentleman on the line who was from Nevada, very conservative state. Democratic governor, ironically, but has the largest gun show in the country every year called SHOT Show. A bit of interesting trivia. Andrew, you were saying something before I rudely interrupted you.
No, you didn't interrupt me at all. But no, one of the things I was actually just going to say is because, when I listen to you, you definitely sound like somebody who, what's going on. You kind of have your finger on the pulse. Have you ever thought about running for office?
No, because I couldn't in good conscience align with either agenda of either party and take their money. In midst of all this discussion, Andrew, there's a midpoint. It's called compromise. There's a lack of civility. There's a lack of decency and respect in our conversations and the way in which we address each other. Starting with the media that creates your narrative and your optic, and it just resonates through the politicians. When they stop demeaning each other, and it goes back to Trump, who I happen to think Trump did a lot of wonderful things for this country. This country had chops under him, and people were afraid of us. And whether people understand this or not, fear is an important factor in life. I've been in the private security sector for a very long time, 4 decades. And people hire me because they're fearful of someone wanting to hurt them, kidnap them, or whatever. Fear is what it is. They were afraid of Donald Trump. They're not afraid of Joe Biden. I wish I could say that they were. I hope Joe Biden had a successful administration because we would benefit from it, but we're not. Listen, Andrew, I got to hop. Please call back in, and we've got to go to another caller. I believe I have Steve, who's in Naples, Florida, getting a suntan. I'm going to send you some suntan lotion. Wait a second. We're going to be right back. Hold on. Yep, we'll be right back. So let me tell you a little bit about Buzzsprout. Very interesting concept. Basically, it allows you to set up your own podcast. One of the most advantageous things about using Buzzsprout is it's user-friendly. So I encourage you highly, if your inclination is to create your own podcast, please look into Buzzsprout. And by the way, we use it. Hello.
Hello, is this Lou?
It is. Is this Steve?
Yes, Steve from Naples. How are you?
You need some suntan lotion, Steve?
I do. It is quite sunny out today and tomorrow, yesterday, and the next day.
Well, that's why you're down there, Steve. Where are you from originally?
Pennsylvania, next
very
to
good.
Philly.
Very good. Are you a snowbird or are you permanently transplanted?
Still trying to figure that out, actually.
That's right. There's no pressure. Relax. You have a question today, Steve?
I do. Wondering what kind of insights you have with BlackRock, with all their paws into our current administration. I understand BlackRock's one of the biggest financial institutions out there. They have more money than most countries. But so it makes sense that, they're involved with their White House. But, all of a sudden it seems like they're buying up all of our housing. And it's driving up the housing costs. It's driving up rent. What's going on? Is this administration trying to make us get rid of the middle class? Like, what's going on?
That's a very interesting question as to what the agenda is with this administration. And I want to say something that people need to clearly hear. I'm not anti-Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I would say at best I'm an independent. I'm watching the manner in which we are building the culture for the American class. For example, Steve, just look at the price of gasoline. In the last 3 days, I watched it jump 90 cents in my community. And the people in the middle class and below are not going to have the money to navigate this problem. So let me tell you what this really translates to. It's not just housing prices. It has to do with this concept known as disposable income. So when you decide to go on a vacation, you're going to drive? Nah. You're going to fly? Probably not, because their jet fuel prices are going to go up. Hotels are going to take a hit, restaurants, all these amusement parks all over the place. And in general, we're going to just stagnate this country because people are financially traumatized. I am struggling to understand who in God's name is sitting in Washington, D.C. on both sides of the aisle and letting this go on. This is not as tragic, but it's at least, it's funny to think they're sitting there and they don't know what's going on in their own country and the impact of their policies. I don't get this.
It's unbelievable.
Steve, not for anything. Conversations that left the radar screen, the borders, the rampant crime in your major cities, your overall quality of life, the anxiety and the stress that people are being subjected to between the virus and now we're bouncing like a basketball with the economy. Who the hell is running this place? And they all sit up there in their ivory towers because you know what? They get driven around by the Secret Service or the State Department or DOD security detail or the FBI. I know them all. Mm-hmm. They live in a cocoon. That's the problem. Yeah. They're drinking a different elixir than we're drinking. And they're battering this country into the ground. They're going to stagnate this economy. No one with the brain in their head. And gasoline in Beverly Hills, California was reported, and I watched it on the news, $6.95 a gallon. The low end in California, $5 a gallon. Let me do the math for people. Put 10 gallons of gas in your car, that's $50.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have to start to make priorities. Are you going to pay your rent? You're going to pay utilities in your house, your phone? Are you going to feed your children? Are we going to put gas in our cars? This is going to have a dramatic ripple effect. And to speak to this issue very simply, I believe, Steve, you are like-minded as I am. You're concerned about the environment, the ecology. This transition into the electric world, of which I somehow believe they're trying to duressfully push us into by making it so, how would you say, unattractive to use fossil fuel, that we're going to go like, I surrender, I'll get an electric car. There are flaws in the electric car world, folks. You can't charge these cars expeditiously. They only go 250 miles. So if you go on the road on a road trip that's 1,000 miles, Steve, you got to stop 4 times. It'll take you at least a half hour each time to charge your car. Just added 2 hours to your travel time. A good scenario, you get to go home and plug your car in. It takes you 8 hours to charge your car on a 7-kilowatt charging point. At least tell us the truth. Oh, no, continue to insult our intelligence. One of the problems with the country, Steve, is that we're distracted by your generation of iPhone, the car you're driving, your flat screen TV, and your vacations. By the way, a lot of those things are going to the wayside. If this oil hits $200 a barrel, you'll be looking at $10 an hour a gallon for gasoline. I'm not quite sure if the village idiot is running the country, but the guy must have placed. The transition from fossil fuel to electric should have been done in increments. I'm not the brightest guy on the planet. I never told anybody I was, but I have an immense amount of common sense. Develop the technology that makes it attractive to go to electric cars. So when you pull into a service station, and there are plentiful service stations, it takes you 5 minutes to charge your car fully, not a half hour, 40 minutes, depending on how much they've invested in the system, depending on how much they can bankroll their venture. This is not brain surgery here, Steve. This is common sense, logic, and reasoning. And there's no decency to what's coming out of Washington, D.C. I don't get this. I'm in favor of the planet. I'm a water guy. I spent 15 years as a lifeguard on the beach in New York on the Atlantic Ocean. I love the environment. But if we're going to attack problems like, fossil fuel and its impact on the environment, you've got to do it with a battle plan. Not that one day we're going like the hammers of hell, right, with fossil fuel and gasoline or whatever's attached to that concept, and Joe Biden gets in office, he shuts it down the next day. What is this? You go from one extreme to another.
It's insane.
You're using the word in a very polite context. Steve, I wish I could keep you on the line. I want to give you a closing comment, if I may, and then I'm going to have to move on to another caller, and I've got some emails backed up, but go ahead, Steve.
Oh, the other thing, what you're saying too with these cars, you have to drive them 70,000 miles just to make the difference up in between the normal car and an electric car. It's insane. Like, you're right. The technology's not there. Even Elon Musk came out the other day and said,
It's
let's
not
release
there.
our oil.
But this is the thing. You know, maybe the way to do this, because the people that have skin in the game, if you go to electric, are the oil companies. Maybe they need to start to invest some money for the development of tech. We're never going to be able to get away from fossil fuel. I don't believe that's the case, not at least in my lifetime.
Where is the electricity going to come from to power these
that's
cars?
one thing. The other thing is, you know, I heard the president made some reference to oil companies gouging. That seems to be the modus operandi in this country. When we're down and out, we make sure we kick each other when we're doing it. This is disgusting what goes on in America, and it's criminal. I worked during the Rodney King riots. At the time, I'll make you laugh, I was billing about $60 an hour for security agent. I got a call from Rochester, New York, Kodak. They were willing to pay me $200 an hour. I bill $60 an hour every day of the week. I don't hold you hostage. We're being held hostage right now also by this oil issue. If this is if the exercise here is to try to muscle you into an electric car because we've beaten you down financially so severely that you're prepared to surrender, I don't know what we're thinking about, but this country is getting unstable. And I have to tell you, the solution to this, in November, you go and you vote. Now, here's the big deal. Likely the conservative element will get a hold of this government from the House and the Senate. Let's see what you do differently. They better get a significant amount of the Senate, by the way. So in the event the president vetoes a bill, 2/3 of the Senate is necessary to override that veto. This is a big discussion. You know, I sometimes wish I was younger, to be candid with you, and I'm still a young guy. And I was naive enough to want to go into politics because you can't fix this problem from within.
Right.
They're all in there with their hands in each other's goddamn, excuse me, I'm not allowed to say that, right? They're with their pockets, in each other's pockets.
We need to get rid of lobbyists.
Lobbyists, special interest groups, and we talk about it all the time, and they campaign about it, and then it goes to the wayside. They blow enough smoke up your keister, just enough to get you to vote for them, and then they forget you for the next 2 years or the next 6 years, whatever the cycle of election is. We are in a crossroad right now, domestically and foreign, and this is a litmus test for our leaders, which seem to be lacking. I don't see this administration doing anything productive for this country, especially its working class people. And I'm watching this thing in the Ukraine, which is just shameful. There's nothing else to say. Steve, I got to hop. Please call back in. Please call back in. I got to take another caller, buddy.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
Guys, we have one email I'd like to get into right now. It's Janet from Sacramento. She says, Lou, gas has reached a record high here in Sacramento. It just jumped 50 cents in a week, and there seems to be no end. I have 3 kids who are between the ages of 14 and 18 years old and constantly driving them to numerous after-school activities. What advice do you give the middle-class families who are struggling with this recent surge at the gas pump, and is there an end in sight? Well, I'm going to answer the last part of this question first. There is an end in sight. The administration just needs to seem to embrace it. They need to open up our pipelines, quote unquote, starting with Keystone. And I heard it's going to take a couple of years. We seem to be able to do whatever we want to do or need to do whenever we want to. But that's one thing. Tragically, you're going to have to curtail and pick and choose your priorities in life. And obviously, the welfare of your children is your number one priority. You're going to have to prioritize the importance of their extracurricular activity because you may not be able to buy gas and buy food. This is the direction some people are going, whether we want to discuss it or not. They don't discuss it in Washington, D.C. because they live in a cocoon. That's the interesting thing. I'm going to go out and do a study and see how many of these people buy gas where it comes out of their pockets, or is it written off on their taxes, which is a whole nother discussion. I got the whole memo with the Green Deal. I got it. I'm concerned about the environment. I think only the insane are not. But there was a manner in which we should be transitioning from fossil fuel to alternate forms of energy, whether it's windmills, electric, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't done. For people that go to these Ivy League schools that we branded in the 60s, the best and the brightest during the Kennedy administration, they are falling short. By the way, look at the condition of your country with them steering it. You need common sense, logic, reason, decency, civility. These are qualities of leadership, not your political agenda. Not your good old boys club at Yale or Harvard or whatever institution you came from at Princeton. This is absurd what's going on in the country. And here's another problem that's being fed. Our population, I keep telling everybody, has gone 1960 was 180 million. It jumped 20 million from 1960 to 1970 to 200 million. We went from 200 million up 135 million, and so did the problems exponentially in this country. I do not understand what we're doing in Washington, D.C. Is everybody's head in the clouds? Do you ever get out in the street and talk to the people and watch the duress that they're living under because of your policies? I got the memo on fossil fuel, but we were not positioned to shut off our oil and go to electric. It just isn't there. A quick charge is 30 minutes. Who's got time to sit somewhere and charge your car for 30 minutes? Or better yet, if your car breaks down, I know that you can download all these programs and they can fix them remotely a lot of times. What happens when you can't? Who services these cars? Oh, yeah, by the way, your lithium batteries, 80% of them are coming out of China. Once again, we dealt away our dependency, not on each other, but to foreign countries. Tesla uses their batteries, by the way. I don't know where to go with this thing, but it's distressing. And I say this to you, stay calm. We will get through this. Above all things, this is the most resilient country in the history of mankind, and we have the ability to stop on a dime and change direction. You must believe that. I hope that answered that question. I encourage you to call me because I'd like to engage in an exchange with you. We're going to go to a quick break, guys, and we'll be right back. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We have an email from Wendy from Bethesda, Maryland. She asks, Lou, should the United States facilitate the transfer of fighter aircraft to the Ukraine from Poland and other NATO and Eastern European countries, or should we not get involved until we have to? Well, this is my position. 27 of the NATO nations exist in Europe. This is a global issue. This isn't a regional issue. We need to galvanize the planet and go after this. The other thing we need to digest is that we're dealing with someone that we cannot predict what he's going to do, but you cannot be held hostage with the threat of using a nuclear device. Guys, sometimes it just is what it is. Maybe this is history. Maybe it was written in the Bible. I don't know how to reconcile this for you. But the problem with Mr. Putin is there's no end in sight for him. That's what this is about. Now, as far as us supplying aircraft to the Ukraine via Poland, we should absolutely do this. We should absolutely go in and bomb them ourselves. And if Putin wants to get into this, then let's get it on, because this is not going away. We have crossed a threshold. What we need to do is work on China, so China sees the ill of his ways. That's one thing right there. And maybe that will deter them from going into Taiwan, because that's going to bring another episode of this. If the exercise is to bring the world to an end, we're on the right path right now. The sad part with Putin is he's no dope. He was in the KGB, and he's very hard to access. If you study history with Hitler, there were a number of individuals in his command staff that were prepared to whack him, which is what needs to happen here. If you think this is the people of Russia behind this, you've never been more mistaken. The one thing I've learned about people, no matter where I've traveled, be it the United States, South America, Europe, pick a place, everybody's just battling to get through the day. They have wives, they have children, they have overhead. This is a small number of people leading countries, making policies, sometimes walking them into demise. If you look at the stability in Russia, that's an oxymoron. There is no stability in Russia. There's no stability in many of these countries. The problem with this country is we take everything we have for granted. That's the simple, sad truth of this discussion. When you worry about your laptops and your iPhone generators, they keep pumping them out. As you buy an iPhone today, we got another one on the assembly line coming your way. That's what we're focused on. That's what your kids are focused on. We took our eye off the ball. Maybe a little struggle will help us. That's one way to look at this. You know, as far as how you navigate this, your children are your priority. There's nothing more important. I tell people this: when you have children, your life ends when theirs begins. And then when they leave your home, you get your life back. If you don't have that mindset, do yourself a favor, don't have them. I feel for you. I wish I could tell you how to navigate this other than you're going to have to make some choices. You also have to make some phone calls. Call your congressman. Call the White House. Call the White House and ask them what they're thinking about here. I got it. We bent after, this is what happened with Mr. Biden. He made a deal with the devil, too, within his own party. The Democratic Party is broken. It's fractured. They are fighting from within. It's why they're in so much trouble. But Joe Biden is not a progressive Democrat. He's been a conservative Democrat his whole mediocre life. That's the truth of the matter. But we have AOC in his ear, who for whatever reason transitioned from being a bartender to a political leader. I guess she's got a lot of life experience like I have under my belt, bumping into different people and dancing with different people and learning from different people. And most importantly, learning how to listen to people and understanding that everybody brings something to the table. Not that you've got this tunnel vision approach to how you're going to fix problems. I see you're hooked on the Green Deal. You're hooked on the light rail. I got the light rail. And the kids in minority neighborhoods can't wait to get a ride from New York to Washington or Boston to Washington in an hour. I don't know what's going on in this country, but part of it is nobody votes in New York. Less than 20% of the electorate of the registered voters voted in the mayor's election and voted in her election, by the way. And I'm not singling her out. We have an entire, I would say, regiment of these individuals. They just don't understand enough about life. They're young. She's young. Tlaib is young. Omar's young. Cori Bush is a young woman. Maxine Waters, I handled her security during the Rodney King riots. She was a councilwoman. She didn't sing and dance then the way she does now. She's become quite radical, quite angry, and I would say quite provocative when you recommend that people interfere with people. Why would you do that as an elected official? By the way, why isn't there a process to remove you when you do something so ill-conceived? I don't understand what we're doing in the country. But the deal is, we need to figure out how to take the country back. It's done through the voting process. But once the conservative element gets a hold of this country, and I tell you this whole oil issue right now is a Biden problem. It's a Biden administration problem. They precipitated it when he decided to just randomly close the pipeline first day in office. We were going to show Donald Trump's way was wrong. You know what? People only know one thing, when they're not struggling. That's the interesting part about this thing. The most important thing in everybody's life is money. You want to get their attention, put your hand in their pocket. Everybody's feeling it in this country. And it isn't just gas. It's when you go to supermarkets. The cost of foods have gone up. Lumber is like tripled or quadrupled. You can't build a house. Supposedly housing is going up. What are we trying to do? Destroy the country? Is that the agenda in Washington, D.C.? Is that what we're doing here? In any case, I hope that answered your question. I may have gone off a few tangents with you, but I apologize if I did. Guys, we're going to be right back. Guys, I'm back. This is Lou Palumbo, Between the Lines. I suggest you find us at betweenthelines.tv. Call in, write, preferably call so we can have an exchange. It's more personal. Come down and visit me for that matter. We have a question from Brian from Nashville, Tennessee. Does the war in Ukraine speak to why the Second Amendment is crucial? Please give us your thoughts. Excuse me, Brian. Well, let's see now. The Ukrainian people who have gone disarmed for many, many years, especially since it was part of Russia, see, the Russians were all disarmed also, suddenly through divine intervention, they realized they needed to arm their populace because they were dealing with tyranny and a foreign invader. So you can now go to a gas station or a police station, or pretty much any station, and have an assault rifle issued to you, probably an AK-47. Which now brings us back to the question about gun control in our country and our founding fathers. For those of us that are familiar with the Second Amendment, which seems to have been the second most important thing in constructing the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, right? Freedom of speech, religion, press, etc. That was the first thing on the hit parade with our founding fathers. The next most important thing wasn't due process, wasn't search and seizure. It was your right to bear arms, because they put their heads together and went like, this is the tool that liberated us from the tyranny of Great Britain. Duh. Guns are not about, the Second Amendment, is not about guns. It's about your freedom. Pull your heads out of your hiney. It's about your freedom. They were concerned about tyranny, tyrannical government, ours or external, and foreign invaders. Boy, does that sound familiar or look familiar? So now we have a whole demographic in the country that's been chirping away at you about why we don't want guns in America. That's because we can control you. Look at all these foreign countries where we've disarmed them. They're at the mercy of their government, right, wrong, indifferent, good or bad. Just the truth attached to the discussion. I worked in Europe in the late 70s and early 80s. We were armed there. They have disarmed Europe. So you're sitting there waiting to be the focal point of some type of terrorist incident. And interestingly enough, the terrorists always seem to be able to get their hands on weapons, kind of like our criminal element here. We have plenty of gun laws. We don't have enforcement. And when we do catch you with a gun, we don't want to charge you with the gun charge. This is what's going on in your country. Don't believe me. Don't take anything I say to you as fact. Go out and fact check it. And while you're at it, stop listening to the people in these 24-hour news cycles as if they know what they're talking about. It's a lot of their opinion. It's a lot of their political agenda. But now let me go back to this discussion with gun control here. So their theory is you don't need an assault rifle. Go tell that to the people in Ukraine right now. Go tell that to Zelensky. You don't need assault rifles. Tragically, these things are what we call necessary evils. People may not understand this about me, but I don't like guns. I don't like anything that by its intrinsic nature was designed to harm someone. That's not my cloth, but it's been a tool of mine for 48 plus years. I know its application. The Ukraine people are learning about it. I guess they think it can happen here. Our concern here is tyrannical government because there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just look at the way they're bullying you right now with fuel and leveraging you into cars with electricity and stifling this economy and its growth. This is tyrannical behavior. I'm not suggesting revolution, guys. Go vote for the people that you believe are going to keep you free, going to keep you safe, going to understand that they work for you, not their own agendas and all their cronies. That's what's going on in Washington. Speak to Governor Schwarzenegger. He clearly understands how broken the system is, and it's on both sides of the aisle. What we're doing right now when we vote, we're voting for the lesser of evils. I hate to break it down for you. When you look at Hillary Clinton and you look at Donald Trump, you're voting for the lesser of evils. That's not how we're supposed to be doing this. And just to remind everybody, we voted for Joe Biden for one simple reason. He was likable, more likable than the Antichrist, Donald Trump. We developed such animosity towards him because of his lack of discretion and his rhetoric that we voted for somebody who was a nice guy, Uncle Joe. I got the memo. It would have been nice if we voted for the most competent person, but that's not our mechanism. Our mechanism is to control things by any means necessary. That's what you just witnessed in this last election cycle. Now he's being held hostage by his own political party. The guys pushing back, by the way, Manchin, Kristen Sinema, West Virginia, Arizona, respectively. And I will tell you this, there are other conservative Democrats that are not drinking this Kool-Aid. That's indicative by the fact that 32 of them at least are not seeking re-election. They're not giving up their livelihood or however many years they invested in the system to just simply walk away. They can't be affiliated or associated with this Democratic Party. It's become toxic. And I remind you, you need a Democratic Party. You need a Republican Party. They need to be healthy. They need to be properly motivated. They need to have their eye on the ball, not their own agendas like the light rail. Okay, folks? Or gun control. Gun control is a dead issue. I don't know why we don't re-quantify it and say we need gun management. And by that I mean teach people how to manage guns. Learn about them operationally so you're safe. Learn about the law so you don't get pigeonholed by breaking the law one time because you think you're allowed to do something that you're not. And I also would like to see some type of screening process to keep the mentally ill and emotionally disturbed people from acquiring access to them because, to remind everyone for the 1,000th time, common denominator to your mass shootings is mental illness. Nobody of right mind goes into a movie theater, a supermarket, a college campus, Walmart, or any place who's of right mind and indiscriminately slaughters people. The rest of them might be, I would say, workplace violence. You know, homicide, interestingly enough, has traditionally had the highest clearance rate because it's what we call a crime of passion, period. You know, it's what drives it. People that go in to rob a store as a rule, they're not going in to commit a murder. They're going in to steal, right? Whether it's money or product. Interestingly enough, if you use a gun, it's another additional 7 charges, which is why in New York, for example, and I know I'm bouncing on you guys, just stick with me. In New York, they don't want to include the fact that they used the gun in the commission of a crime. If you shoot someone during the commission of a crime, it's called felony murder. You get a much bigger rap. You got to understand what's going on here. And our concern today should be a number of things. We're not talking about the borders now. We're not talking about the crime in your major cities. We're focused on gas because, boy, that's a direct hand right in your pocket, right? And we're worried about the Ukraine. I listened to these 2 young congressional members the day after the president's State of the Union speech. They were gleefully humming along about how, you know, we have come together. We put our differences aside. This is bipartisan. We really want to pool our resources to now go and fix the problems of the people in the Ukraine. Hey, knuckleheads, how about you try that on here? Okay? All you do here is slit each other's throats rhetorically, further polarize us from one another and divide this country. But you're prepared to pull your resources together to help the people in the Ukraine, which is quite noble, I have to say. Why don't you apply that tactic here? Why don't you all stop thinking it's my way or the highway? Because that's not how life is, folks. It's about compromise. I'm going to go back to this electric issue. I'm not against electricity, okay? I'm fine with it. Oh, yeah, by the way, the president alluded to the fact that the gas companies are going to be gouging. That's just something we do in this country. It's disgusting. It's against the law. You don't think the electric company is going to do the same thing if they see the opportunity? You cannot create just one market. That is not the way this is going to work. But we should have transitioned, and we seem to be trying to transition, but technology cannot keep up with our desires. You can't go into a service station and sit there for a half an hour at least to charge your car. That just isn't feasible, folks. The other thing is that, and I mentioned this earlier with another caller, we are once again dependent upon outside technology to support our efforts. I don't know who's running the show here, folks. They can criticize Donald Trump all they want, and believe me, the man's got a lot of faults. I got it. We all have faults, myself included. But he was onto something when he said about bringing manufacturing back into this country, because now we're being held hostage by relationships and the wants and needs and desires of foreign entities. For everybody's understanding, Taiwan is the largest chip maker in the world. I don't know how much China's prepared to pay. Let me say one thing. I don't think China's army is like Russia's army. I think China's army, I have a feeling, is the real deal. This demonstration by Russia about what their military might is a very poor showing. And I do realize we're helping them along the way with Stinger missiles and Javelin missiles. I got the memo on that thing. But I will tell you this. I'm just questioning what our agenda is, independent of the NATO discussion and our fear of Putin. Like we're afraid of Putin. You think that's the way you're going to navigate Putin, is by being fearful of him? It just simply isn't the case. And I know I went off the conversation here about the Second Amendment, but to bring it back to you, it's why this country's so heavily armed. And you're not going to have gun control. The light side of estimate in this country is 500 million guns. ATF about 2 or 3 weeks ago came out with a number that they have a record of 1 billion guns, which wouldn't surprise me. Okay? Where do you see gun control here, folks? Why don't you sit down and put your hats on and see if we can find some kind of compromise to manage this little, quantity in our society. I'll tell you something else that's interesting. 2 days ago, Ohio became the 22nd state where you may now carry under what they call constitutional carry. That means that by the very nature of our Second Amendment to the Constitution, in their state, you can carry a concealed weapon without a permit, which, by the way, living in the times that we're living in, I'm in favor of. I think we need a vetting process. Right now, 22 states. Last year, Tennessee went. Last year, September 1st, Texas went. And we have more states heading in that direction. I don't know if they're listening in Washington, D.C., or watching what's going on in your country, but your country has been unnerved, and you are the reason it's unnerved. It's your lack of proper governing that's unnerved this country, and they're gravitating towards tools much the same way our founding fathers did that would guarantee their freedom and the safety of their families. I have a solution to many of these issues. I don't know if they're really interested in fixing problems. All I've done my whole life is fix problems. I don't know anything else. I don't want to live in drama. You just come in, clean it up, and get out and go on with your life. To remind everyone, this isn't a dress rehearsal. I'm just telling you, we're not getting another run at this. And the exercise here is to find as much peace and calm as you possibly can and translate that to your children so they have a better quality of life. I think I've said enough for the day, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why I'm so amped up, but I am. And I think this thing in the Ukraine is wearing on me, and the shameful manner in which it's not being addressed. And I'm watching this country become more and more unstable or destabilized every day, and the cost of living is helping it. My name's Lou Palumbo. This has been Between the Lines, and I thank you for your indulgence today. See you next week.